Can you talk in depth about the reasons for the market downturn?
Yeah, well, I think, as I mentioned earlier, the downturns are always triggered by the same thing, and that is this mismatch between supply and demand. And once you get into an overcapacity situation, then when you're transitioning from an overcapacity to an undercapacity or an undercapacity to an overcapacity, you always get these abrupt changes in the units that we ship to the customer, not in the demand, because what we ship and what you need is two different things. It's plus or minus any inventory adjustment that's happening in between there. So the demand may stay the same, but what you're buying, what you're ordering is going to be very different. It's going to be what you need plus what extra you want to have for your inventory to keep your supply chain either safe or to cut back on your inventory because you've got too much stock. So I think you always do get this, and that's typical of every cycle. And this cycle is no different, and the 18th will be exactly the same until industry manages to balance supply and demand much better. And that's quite a complicated issue. And I don't know when or how that could actually happen because it's contrary to the way the industry works. So I think it is the same. It is always driven by liquidation of inventory, falling prices. Eventually, you liquidate the inventory, so you've got to buy more. That rebuilds the demand up. Factories start to get full again. And in the meanwhile, you stopped investing because you've got too much capacity. So you stop investing, and that starts the very next cycle to go. So I think it's always subtly different. Not all products react at the same time. Memory always reacts quickly, then micro, and then logic, and then analog. It's always the last one to react in the cycle. And not every sector is different as well. I mean, because you find that some sectors, the PC, the consumer sectors react much faster than, for example, the automotive sector, which is on a much longer, much more slow kind of lead time to supply. So I think every sector is different, every product is different, but they all work to the same tune. They're all marching to the same drum. It's just small timing differences that really make the overall.
What advice do you have for people in the semiconductor industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think the real message is learn the lessons of history. I mean, history is a reliable indicator of how behavior will happen in the future. And in general, the world is bad at learning the lessons from history. We always want to believe it's going to be different this time, and we always believe that there's real reasons why that's going to be the case. But in reality, it really is different this time because it is following natural sort of thought processes and natural dynamics, which unless you're changing those dynamics, then the result will not be different. If you want a different result, you have to do something different. And we're not. We're behaving in exactly the same way as we have done in the past. So I think the main thing I would say to clients, to investors, to all of the people in the food chain is, okay, look at the natural things. Don't be overcomplicated. Don't overthink it. Look to see what is actually happening. Where are we in the cycle? What has happened before? How is that likely to affect what's likely to happen in the future? And I think when you do look at those things there and you keep those in the back of your mind, all you're looking now for is differences, variances. How does it subtly different? But you've got the underlying theme in your mind there. So you're really looking to see, well, how will it subtly resolve itself in a slightly different fashion this time now? But it's very unlikely, as this downturn is showing. I mean, it is rolling out exactly as the previous ones have. We've had 3 consecutive quarters now in this adjustment, and they're behaving in exactly the same way as every other one of those past 17 downturns has behaved. And the upturn is likely to behave in exactly the same way because eventually we will liquidate the inventory. We will have to therefore buy more parts because now we're not living off stock. We're living off what we're ordering. So your orders will automatically increase. That will stop the prices falling because suddenly demand is going up. And so suddenly prices will stop falling, or they may even start to increase. And if that happens, you get into a positive spiral. And then eventually you will absorb all that excess capacity, and you will suddenly find yourselves, I haven't got enough capacity. That's a 2-year lead time. Until we learn to build capacity in anticipation of what we're needing, you're never going to be able to try to soften that forward-looking dislocation between supply and demand. And we used to do that, but now we don't, because people can't afford to build an expensive factory and not knowing who they're going to sell the output to. But customers are reluctant to commit to that output, to say, well, I guarantee to take that in 2 years' time, because they don't know. So, I mean, you have an impossible equation to balance.